In her critique of big tech, Shoshana Zuboff begins with a powerful question. Can the digital future be our home? And she argues convincingly that we should be worried about this. Our technology threatens to bring a future in which human values are deeply threatened, a future where we might not really have a home. Zuboff's focus is on surveillance capitalism, the original sin of big tech, invented by Google and adopted by Facebook and others. This practice of collecting user data and applying it to targeted advertising, she sees this as an existential threat to democracy and to human nature itself. But there's a problem with the way Zuboff talks about surveillance capitalism. Maybe it's just terminology. In her account of surveillance capitalism, there are several specific terms Zuboff uses that seem a bit off to me. And the more you look at it, the harder it is to clear up the terminological confusion. In fact, the very concept of surveillance capitalism seems to evaporate into thin air. Let's start with a favorite phrase of Zuboff's, digital dispossession. She says, surveillance capitalism originates in an act of digital dispossession. This suggests a kind of taking or theft. There's data that I possessed that was taken from me that I no longer possess. But this can't be the case. Data is a kind of informational good. It makes no sense to speak of being dispossessed of information or data. Perhaps I've searched on Google for flights to Singapore and ski equipment and health information over the past few days. Of course, I'm well aware that I have done this. I possess this information. Now, if Google collects the data on my searches, it might use it for its own profit, perhaps in ways which I find objectionable. But there's no sense in which I am dispossessed of the data. I still have it. It's just that now Google has it too. This is just a basic fact about data and all informational goods. If you possess an informational good, then I can come to possess that same good, and it has no effect on the fact that you possess it. Of course, ordinary goods are not like that. If you use my lawnmower to cut the lawn, I won't be able to use it. If you eat the sandwich I put in the fridge, I will go hungry. I will indeed have been dispossessed of my sandwich. Economists describe this by saying that data and other forms of information are non-rival goods. So on the face of it, it's just false to speak of digital dispossession. I don't know why Zuboff does this. And it's not just about this one term. This confusion lurks within the precise definition Zuboff gives to surveillance capitalism. And this is crucial because she wants to make a sharp distinction between surveillance capitalism and benign ways for tech firms to use our data. The distinction for her involves the behavioral surplus. In the early days of Google's search technology, it was found that user data, such as what links were clicked on, could be used to improve the search engine. Zuboff applauds this because all behavioral data are reinvested in the improvement of the product or service. She calls this the behavioral value reinvestment cycle. But then the behavioral surplus came into existence. As Zuboff puts it, behavioral data, whose value had previously been used up on improving search for users, now became raw material for advertising. What does Zuboff mean by saying that the data had been used up by improving search? Just as information cannot be dispossessed, it cannot be used up. And she goes on, that surplus was diverted from service improvement toward a market exchange, that is, advertising. As if Google had to stop using some data for search improvement because it was now using it for advertising. Zuboff says surveillance capitalism begins with the discovery of the behavioral surplus, but the concept of behavioral surplus simply doesn't make sense. Zuboff depicts the discovery of behavioral surplus with two cycles, a small cycle on the bottom, suggesting that a small amount of behavioral data is used for service improvements, while most of the data is used in the larger cycle on top for the sake of advertising and other prediction products. Zuboff approves of Google's earlier phase with the behavioral value reinvestment cycle, where all behavioral data are reinvested in the improvement of the product or service. But That is still the case. Google undoubtedly continues to use all relevant user data for the improvement of search and other products. I don't see how to make sense of the concept of behavioral surplus. So, can we salvage the notion of surveillance capitalism without the concept of behavioral surplus? Maybe. There is another part to the critique, which involves the use of behavioral data in the service of advertising, specifically to target ads to individual users. But what exactly is the issue? It's not the fact that Google collects behavioral data, or even that it uses machine learning to draw inferences from that data in ways that users are completely unaware of, because all that was true of the virtuous behavioral reinvestment cycle where Google used data to improve search. What was the crucial change, the original sin that was committed by Google when it invented surveillance capitalism by beginning to sell advertising? I think the essential point for Zuboff comes down to this. Because it uses behavioral data and machine learning, Google can sell ads that actually work. With traditional advertising on TV and print media and radio, most of it was probably worthless. It's very hard to evaluate the effect of a particular ad. With online advertising, there's a crucial difference. You could tell if a user actually clicks on an ad. You actually have a way to measure the effect. And this led to the other key change. The click-through rate could be used as the target for supervised machine learning. Google could use all its data and computing power to learn for a given user with certain characteristics and a given ad at a particular time, what is the probability the user would click on the ad? Now, this is a very hard thing to predict, but over time, Google has probably gotten better and better at this. Zuboff certainly thinks so. As she says, there would be no more guesswork in the advertising budget. Mathematical certainty would replace all of that. Zuboff seems to be arguing that the predictive power of advertising has become so accurate that it has transformed from knowledge to influence to control. Surveillance capitalism has achieved the ability to control users. We're in danger of losing our freedom because surveillance capitalism is able to control us. Zuboff worries that today the predictive analytics behind surveillance capitalism have become so accurate that it's now possible to control users. This would indeed be a terrifying prospect, but it would mean an astounding improvement in predictive accuracy. And the complexity of human psychology would suggest that such control is essentially impossible. And here's a real irony. By claiming that surveillance capitalists can achieve such accurate prediction and control behavior, Zuboff is helping big tech to control their real customers, the advertisers.